Imagine pouring your entire life into your family, sacrificing everything for their dreams. But then, your own daughter sides with her cheating mother, calls you a failure, and cuts you out of her life. What would you do a year later when she shows up on your doorstep, sobbing, begging for a second chance?
Me?
I laughed. Hard. A year ago, my life was, well, it was supposed to be stable.
Happy even?
I'd been married to Mia for 25 years. 25. Then one night, out of nowhere, she just confessed she wanted a divorce. It hit me like a physical blow. No signs, no warnings, just done. She looked at me, no flicker of emotion in her eyes, and flatly said she didn't love me anymore. Said I wasn't attractive. She even implied I wasn't the man she'd fallen in love with. Her words stung.
Deep.
In a way, I couldn't argue. I knew I'd let myself go. Back when Mia and I first met, I was on top of my game. A college basketball star. My body was my temple.
Peak condition.
I had admirers, sure, but it all changed when I met Mia. After we married and our daughter, my Jane, was born, reality hit. Family life, responsibilities piled up. Mia wanted to be a homemaker, which meant I had to step up. Financially, I took extra shifts. My job became my everything. Day in, day out. No sick days, no breaks. My sole focus, Mia and Jane. Their happiness, their comfort. That came first. And somewhere along the way, I stopped prioritizing myself. I no longer looked like that college athlete. But to be left because of it? That hurt. Still, her sudden desire for a divorce didn't add up. It just didn't. I had a gnawing suspicion. So, a week later, I hired a private investigator. A coworker who'd been through something similar recommended him. I needed answers. Mia wasn't giving them to me. It didn't take long. The PI uncovered the truth. Mia was cheating. With a guy named George. Regular meetups. Photos. Undeniable proof. I did my own digging. Found George on social media. One look at his pictures and I knew. George came from a much wealthier background. The kind of money, the kind of lifestyle, I could never hope to provide. This was the real reason she was leaving. Not my looks. Not because I'd let myself go. She'd found someone else. Someone who could offer her more. Everything I'd spent 25 years trying, struggling to provide. All my efforts. My sacrifices. Meaningless. Because he had a bigger bank account. The PI kept digging, but I needed my own proof. One night, after Mia was asleep, I checked her phone. My hands shook. Text messages. Graphic.
Disturbing.
Screenshots. She told George how much she hated me. How she didn't like being seen with me. Wished she'd left sooner. But couldn't. Not until she found someone else. I thought I had everything I needed for the divorce. Then, a week later, the investigator sent me new photos. New information. It made my blood run cold. My daughter, Jane, knew. She knew about Mia's affair. She was meeting George regularly. The photos showed her happy. Comfortable. With him. This affair? It had been going on for a long, long time. I was wrong. Both my ex-wife and my daughter knew exactly what they were doing. And for context, just before Mia dropped her bombshell, I'd made a huge financial decision. One that, at the time, felt absolutely right. Jane had always dreamed of owning a house. Something she could call her own. She'd been diligently saving. Every time we spoke, she'd update me on her search. It meant the world to her. A few months ago, she found it. The perfect house. But it was out of her budget. She needed a couple $100,000 more. She came to me, practically begging. Could I give her the money? My life savings. The money I'd set aside for emergencies, for retirement. It wasn't an easy decision. But I love my daughter. More than anything. I couldn't bear the thought of her losing her dream. So, I did it. I gave her everything. Every penny. I figured as a parent, sacrifices like this are part of the job. My own parents had helped me buy my house, spent countless nights with us when Jane was born. They sacrificed for me without ever asking for anything. I wanted to do the same for my only child. I wanted Jane to be happy. This house I truly believed would be the key. When I gave her the money, I told her to use the rest for renovations. The house was older. It would need work. I didn't want her house rich, but cash poor. I wanted a safety net for her. I convinced myself, it's just money. I could always earn more. I had a good job, I'd rebuild my savings. What mattered was seeing Jane's dream come true. She was over the moon, crying in my arms, thanking me. That's why discovering she'd been meeting George, knowing about her mother's affair, felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't sit in silence. I confronted them, both Mia and Jane. No point hiding, I said. I know everything. Mia's immediate reaction? Not guilt, not remorse, anger. She was furious I'd hired a PI, as if I was the one who had wronged her. I wasn't having it. If anyone has a right to be furious, I told her, it's me. You've been sleeping with another man, betraying my trust. Her outrage only confirmed it. She had no respect for me.
None.
Then I turned to Jane. She stood there, embarrassed, avoiding my eyes. Guilt written all over her face. It broke my heart. My little girl. The one person I thought I could always rely on. I asked her directly, "Why were you meeting with George?" She hesitated, looking between me and her mother. Mia was shaking her head, a silent signal for Jane to keep quiet. That made me even more determined. I told Jane how deeply hurt I was to see her with this man who destroyed my marriage. I urged her to be honest. That's when Jane finally broke. She revealed everything. She knew Uncle George, that's what she called him, for a very long time. Said he was a good man. My blood ran cold. "When did you first meet Uncle George?" I asked. She hesitated again, then finally admitted. Mia introduced him to her when she was 18. My eyes widened. Disbelief. Mia had been having an affair with George for at least 6 years. Or even more. 6 years. All this time, while I was working myself to the bone, making sacrifices, Mia was carrying on this secret relationship right under my nose. The betrayal wasn't just recent. It had been festering for years. In the shadows. While I remained completely oblivious.
Shock.
Anger.
Heartbreak.
The life I thought I knew was nothing but a lie.
And Jane.
My daughter. She knew for so long and said nothing. My family, the people I loved most, had been keeping this secret from me for years. It was more than I could bear. Jane tried to justify it. When she first caught her mother, she was furious, like me. But over time, things changed. She claimed the more she saw how happy George made Mia, the more she convinced herself that staying silent was the best choice. As if her silence was somehow protecting our family. Mia, on the other hand, didn't even try to show remorse. She argued it didn't matter how long the affair had been going on. The only thing that mattered was she was divorcing me anyway, leaving me for good. She even tried to justify her deception, saying she only stayed with me for Jane's sake. Now that Jane was an adult, she didn't have to pretend to be in love with me anymore. I scoffed. Jane turned 18 5 years ago. I shot back. If you truly only stayed for her sake, you could have left then. Why wait 5 more years? The answer was painfully clear. Mia wanted to make sure George was fully committed, that he'd take care of her financially, emotionally. She was hedging her bets, using me for financial support while making sure George was a sure thing. She didn't argue back.
She knew I was right.
Then I turned to Jane. "This whole situation is your mother's fault," I told her, "but I blame you too, for being such a coward." She could have told me the truth at any point, but she chose to side with her mother. I accused her of loving Mia more than me, despite the fact Mia was clearly not a good parent. I was the one who worked every day, sacrificed my time, my energy, my health. For all these years, while Mia enjoyed a life of comfort and carried on her affair, I reminded Jane of my life savings, my entire life savings, given to her for her dream house. And yet, she hadn't even blinked, taking my money, fully aware of the lies, the betrayal, the deception. Jane started to apologize, her voice shaky, but I was too angry, too hurt. The weight of the betrayal was suffocating. I couldn't stand to be in that house anymore. I walked out. "Mia," I said, "make sure you're gone by the time I get back." I didn't want to see her face again. I felt so used. I had given up my financial security for my daughter, while she and her mother were just using me. When I returned home later that night, both Jane and Mia were gone. Fast forward. The divorce was finalized. Mia, who had fought tooth and nail for alimony, lost. The evidence I'd gathered, the affair, the lies, it was undeniable. It worked in my favor. Since Jane was an adult, I wasn't responsible for child support either. I walked away without owing Mia a dime, and that infuriated her. She was livid, accusing me of leaving her without any financial security, as if I was somehow responsible for her poor choices. As for Jane, she'd stopped talking to me after that confrontation. She clearly sided with her mother during the divorce. No effort to reach out. No apology. I decided to give her space. I hoped she'd come around. But after the divorce was finalized, Jane sent me an email. A knife twisting in my gut. She told me how disappointed she was in me for not giving her mother anything. Said I was vindictive. Said Mia had to walk away empty-handed. As if I was responsible. Jane made it clear she was relieved Mia had found a man like George. Someone who promised them a nicer, more luxurious life. It was surreal reading her words. She sounded like a stranger. Not the daughter I'd raised. Someone who had fully aligned herself with Mia and George. Jane even wrote that these past few months, without me in their lives, had been stress-free. She enjoyed being around George. And then she went there. She called me a failure for not giving her and her mother a better life. Jane ended her email by saying she never wanted to speak to me again. I just stared at that email, unable to process the weight of it. Jane's betrayal stung more than anything Mia had done. My own daughter, someone I had loved, supported, sacrificed so much for, had turned her back on me completely. She chose her mother's lies and George's money over me. It was as if I'd been erased from her life. All those years, all that effort, meant nothing. It took months of therapy, crying, falling down. But my friends and my true family never left my side. After that email, I went no contact with Jane. I learned to not miss her anymore. I felt like I was making progress. Which is why, yesterday when my daughter showed up at my door, out of nowhere, I was genuinely taken aback. She looked like a mess. Puffy, red eyes. Obvious she'd been crying. She asked if she could come in. Talk for a moment. I hesitated. After everything, I wasn't comfortable. But she was still my daughter. A part of me worried about her safety. I wanted to hear her out. So, I stepped aside. Invited her in. We sat down. "What are you doing here, Jane?" I asked, plain and simple. After all this time? That's when Jane started to talk. Her voice shaky at first. But soon she admitted it. I'd been right all along. She'd been foolish. Foolish not to see things for what they were. She called her mother the devil. She explained that after my divorce from Mia, things had taken a turn for the worse. In her life, Mia and George moved in, planning to get married. But things weren't rosy. Not like she thought. George, it turns out, had kids of his own. From previous marriages.
And Mia?
She was bending over backwards, trying to win them over. Jane told me her mother now barely acknowledged her existence. The stepkids came into the picture, and Mia became consumed with pleasing George's kids, doing everything she could to be accepted by them. Jane described how her mother had all but abandoned her emotionally. No time with her, making it clear where her priorities lay. George's kids, Jane explained, did not like her. They were unpleasant, made her feel unwelcome. Jane described how George would host dinner parties, inviting all his kids, except her, conveniently leaving her out. She felt completely rejected by the people she'd once thought would become her new family. When Jane confronted Mia about the blatant favoritism, Mia brushed her off. Told her George's kids deserved love and attention because they were still kids. Unlike Jane. Even going so far as to scold Jane for being so needy. At this point, Jane was in tears. She confessed she had used some of the money I had given her, the same money I'd sacrificed my life savings for, to help out her mother whenever she could. Bought Mia gifts. Things for George's stepkids. Hoping to win their approval. Stay relevant in her mother's life. But now that the money had dried up, Mia's true colors showed. With nothing left to give, Mia had cast her aside like she was nothing. Jane realized Mia didn't really care about her, only about what she could get from her. Jane told me how, for the past year, she had come to realize everything I had told her a year ago was true. Her mother was selfish, manipulative, only concerned with money. Mia had no problem using everyone, me, Jane, and now George. Once people outlived their usefulness, she moved on. Without a second thought. I couldn't help but feel sorry for Jane as she sat there, pouring out her heart, finally realizing the harsh reality, the choices she had made. She had been a fool, and it had taken her this long to learn that painful lesson. But despite the pity I felt for her, I also knew, deep down, that things could never go back to the way they were. The trust between us had been shattered beyond repair. When Jane, through tears, asked if I could let go of the past, forgive her, so we could start things over, something inside me snapped. I laughed, right in her face, out of sheer disbelief. The audacity of it all. After everything she and her mother had put me through, I shook my head, still half amused by the absurdity of her request, and told her the plain truth. There was no forgetting. I couldn't just erase the years of betrayal and hurt, as if they hadn't existed. I reminded her of how she had kept her mother's affair a secret from me for years, all while taking money from me for her own benefit, pretending everything was fine. That wasn't something I could ever forgive. I told her bluntly, in that respect, Jane, you are truly your mother's daughter, manipulative and self-serving. She inherited that trait from Mia, and I wasn't going to let her walk back into my life now, pretending none of it had happened. I made it clear. She chose her side during the divorce. When the dust settled, she stood by Mia and George. And now she would have to live with the consequences of that decision. I told her, flat out, I had no loyalty left for her.
Anymore.
I had spent years sacrificing for her, only to have her betray me. That trust was gone. There was no rebuilding it. Jane tried to argue, probably hoping to appeal to whatever paternal instinct was still left in me. But I cut her off. She was an adult. She needed to learn to solve her own problems. Running to me for help only when things went south with Mia and George wasn't going to work. I had made peace with the fact that she had chosen them over me. Now she would have to live with those consequences. I shut her down quickly, asked her to leave. I didn't want to hear any more about her problems with Mia or George. Frankly, I didn't care. She had made her bed, and now she would have to lie in it. Ever since then, my daughter's words have been circling in my head, and I will admit, I did feel a bit guilty about kicking her out. But I had to stay strong. She had to learn. She did try to reach out to my parents, her grandparents, who she barely spoke to before. My mom called me, saying Jane complained about Mia and George, and called me heartless. I told my mom firmly, don't entertain her calls anymore. I'll handle it. I texted Jane, asked her to meet me at a cafe. She agreed immediately. When I met her, I told her she had no right to reach out to my parents behind my back. Jane argued she just missed having a family. Felt lonely and miserable. I yelled at her. I know exactly how you feel, Jane. Because I experienced that same loneliness when you and your mother left me. I reminded her again of that email, calling me a failure. Then showing up a year later, begging for help. I am sick of your manipulation, I said. You're testing my patience. I warned her. If you contact my parents again, I will get a restraining order against you. They're old. They don't deserve this drama. I made it clear. If she desperately wanted a relationship with us, she needed to start paying me back the money I had given her. Jane argued it was impossible. She could never pay me back. I scoffed.
Exactly.
You can't. Which is why you need to stay as far away from me and my family as possible. After that conversation with Jane, I also sent a voicemail to Mia. Informed her about everything. I asked her to talk to our daughter. so she'd stop bothering me and my family. Otherwise, I would have to seek legal help. I hoped Jane would finally leave us alone. It's been 5 months since then. And to clarify, since everyone keeps asking me, Jane has not bothered my family again. After I sent the voicemail, Mia called me back. She was genuinely surprised that Jane had come to us for help. My ex denied everything Jane had told me, provided a very different version of events. According to her, Jane was the one having difficulty blending in, was quite rude to the stepkids. Mia said she and George had tried their best, but Jane refused to accept their family. She even clarified that everyone in the family buys gifts for each other, and Jane had done so once, but no one had ever forced her. Mia was really confused why Jane had lied to me about so many things. Honestly, I didn't know who to believe. And I simply told Mia, I just don't care what happens between you. I want Jane to stay out of my life. That's it. Mia assured me Jane wouldn't ever bother me again. And I guess she kept her word. Last month, I went on a solo vacation for the first time in my entire life. I was so nervous at first, but then I really enjoyed meeting new people, experiencing a different culture. Life's good, and I have no complaints at the moment. Have you ever had to draw such a harsh line with someone you once loved? How do you move on when family betrays you so deeply? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.